What up, Wizards? It's Dev, and I got Igby down here with me today, too. Isn't that fun? Hey, you guys ever think about how at the very deepest parts of outer space, galaxies away from prying eyes, at the very edge of eternity itself, there lay giants who do not just sleep, but lay dormant and wait. And I've found them all. Nothing ominous about that, I assure you. It just means that there's a lot of really cool cards in the set that, as usual, aren't getting enough attention. But the set is a little surprised by that, right? This is a really popular set from what things look like initially, at least. And it comes between two monster sets that I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to pull their wallets out for. We already know that about Final Fantasy, and Spider-Man's on deck, so that seems money to me. And let's be honest about this, with the hectic release schedule lately, I figured that this would be a set that a lot of people would end up skipping. But no, been rifled through more than your stepsister's underwear drawer. Get out of there, you little animal. Why are you doing that? But even despite all the attention, we still were able to find a bunch of cards that people barely even know exist for whatever reason, and I think might be real cards in Standard and beyond. So let's do it. Top 10 sleepers in the space set.
And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech.
And we're back. Hope you're ready to get wet, because I'm going to go ahead and jump in this pool space, baby. We got some honorable mentions I want to get to. 3 of them, to be exact, this time around. But only one of them really feels like mine. That's because 2 of them were on the main list. But the more I watched other content creators talk about the set, from Doomwake to Ash Lizzle to MTG Malone, go check out all of their content. They are great content creators. I kept seeing both Melt Strider's Resolve and Cryogen Relic on all of their lists. So how much can you really call them sleepers at that point? But I will say this, usually these other content creators that bring up both of these cards are talking about them from a point of view of like, hey, you should know about these cards you probably don't know about. So if you haven't seen anybody else talk about this set yet on YouTube, then I should probably also let you be aware that these cards exist. Now, Meld Strider's Resolve, first of all, it's just a green mana for an aura that staples to one of your creatures. It gives the creature +0/+2, and I think the creature gets reach or something like that. But the important thing here is that when this attaches to one of your dudes, you end up fighting another creature that you don't control. So there's some really cool setups with this, whether it's Bright Glass Gearhulk going and getting a removal spell, which there are multiple ways for it to do, but this might be a way you want to do it. To, maybe Terra from Final Fantasy can come down on turn 4, mill this into your graveyard, pick it up, and go ahead and fight something on the other side of the table, and now you got a 4/4. So there are, again, some pretty cool setups with this, and it might even be decent in the same decks that, like, Sheltered by Ghost are decent in, these kind of decks that want to get down a cheap creature in the early game, protect it for the rest of the game, and staple auras to it from then on out, and you just lose to the one guy. This could, just like Sheltered by Ghost, be a removal spell that also procs all your, Enchantress effects, your Eerie stuff or whatever. So a lot of cool things about this, but the same can be said for Cryogen Relic. This looks really good in like Pixie builds specifically, because it doesn't necessarily have to go to the graveyard in order to draw you the second card. It comes into play, draws you a card, and then when it leaves the battlefield, no matter how it does that, it draws you a card too. So again, you can bring it back to your hand, bouncing it with a Pixie or similar creature in Standard right now, or I guess you could flicker it if you wanted to. That might be cool. You could also sacrifice it to its own ability, or any number of things that let you sacrifice artifacts in Standard right now and get the value that way, and then find a way to get it back from your graveyard somehow, and bing bang, you've drawn 3 cards of it off this point. So that is a really powerful looking Magic card to me. But it also looked really powerful to a lot of other people. I am far from the only content creator who has caught how decent both of these cards look. So again, I just couldn't in good conscience put them on the main list. But I do have an honorable mention that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, and that's Dauntless Scrap Bot. Now, if you remember the preview video where I initially looked at this guy, I kind of fell in love with him too much. I compared him to Solemn Simulacrum a little bit. And you know what? Haven't learned my lesson yet. Still going to do it here. This is just a little artifact guy. It's 3 mana, 3/1 dude that when he comes into play, 2 things happen. 2 ETB triggers. That's already kind of nice, but you get to wipe all your opponent's graveyards from the face of the earth, and you get a lander token. So again, not necessarily Solemn Simulacrum. You're never drawing a card, and it doesn't just put the land out straight away. You got to pay for that land. But I still think this is better in key situations as perhaps a sideboard card, against like Reanimator decks. Being able to wipe their graveyard is obviously great. It has to compete with stuff like Ghost Vacuum and, Rest in Peace and Soul Guide Lantern. Let me get some really good options in Standard for messing around in graveyards out of your board. So I'm not sure this guy quite makes most cuts, don't get me wrong, but again, I think he might be a little bit more value than you think, and another great option in this video, we've already talked about one at least, for like blinking and bouncing and stuff like that, because getting more landers seems okay. You might be getting some value off the artifacts, and hey, he puts 2 artifacts into play when he comes into play. So again, this guy's like a package of value that actually does 2 main things, and then like 5 or 6 little 2% edge casey things that I really, really like. So good dude right here, but I'm just not sure he's quite ready for the show, so he didn't make the list. But let's get to that actual list and look at some good Magic cards, I swear to you, starting with Temporal Intervention at number 10. At first, this doesn't look like much, it's just Coercion. That was printed forever ago, and it sucks. It's 3 mana. You just look at their hand, take a non-land from it, they got to pitch that thing. But the good news is about this, if you get Void on this bad boy, it just becomes Thoughtseize, which is apparently a much better Magic card, I'm told. So I kind of tend to like this. Not just in Aristocrats decks. I'm not just... This won't be one of those videos where I just say Aristocrats for every entry. Number 4, Aristocrats. Aristocrats. But Aristocrat, it's not going to be that kind of video because you are playing swamps in your deck if you have Temporal Intervention, which means you don't have to blow away your own creatures. You can also take out theirs in this case. So that just means if you have like a 1 or 2 mana removal spell, you can play this pretty easily on turn 2 or 3 and take out, a good threat on the other side of the table while you're at it, which seems pretty decent to me. It is not very hard at all to enable this card. But I also like a lot about the Sculpting Blasts over here, another card that I like a lot of things about, but I'm not bold enough to put in the bottom half of the list, but it can be my number 9 because I'm not sure how much I expect from this, but at least I know where it has a home day 1. Any sort of mono blue tempo deck might be really into this jam right here, dude, because, kind of read this. This is how I do it, as a spell that returns an attacking creature to its owner's hand and also bolts that opponent. Like any mono blue tempo deck that's looking to both set back the opponent and attack them at the same time, turns out that's tricky business, but this card allows you to do both. It puts a flying body on the table and puts them back by a turn. That's especially good if they've got any auras or equipments on the creature, or if they put a pump spell on it that turn or whatever. You can use this with great timing to not only set them back a lot, but get yourself a little flying 1/1. If all the 1/1 ever does is block another flyer or something, well, then again, that kind of sets them back by 2 turns now. So depending on how you're using the card, it can either be a pretty good defensive tool to, get past a couple of combat steps, or it can be an offensive tool, get rid of your best guy for a turn, and now I'm going to be attacking you and putting pressure. Multiple copies of this in a game seems not only annoying, but now you're doing 2 damage a turn to them. So again, it could be well over a bolt's worth of damage before it's all said and done. So really like this card. I think I've made that much obvious. I'm soapboxing for it here because I just haven't really heard that many other people talk about Blast, and I think that it could be just that, a blast. I'm not sure I made that clear. It could be a blast to play the card. Number 8, sure, is All Fate Scroll here. Now, at first glance, this is just an ordinary rock. It's just a 3 mana, tap for a mana of any color, that's fine. But you can also pay 7 mana and tap this thing. I acknowledge it's a lot of mana, but you'll end up drawing cards equal to the number of differently named lands that you control. Now, it is not hard to have like 4 differently named lands, especially by the time you have 7 mana worth tapping. You probably have like 5 at least differently named lands and a couple of basics hanging around. Like maybe you've got a couple of copies of a Verge or a Shock land or something like that. So, I still don't think it's going to be too hard to make this draw at the very least 4 cards for you somewhat late in the game. And sometimes it's going to draw 6 or more cards for you. And that is where things get really, really wild, especially considering that the ability is instant speed on this thing. It can also ramp you into like a 5 mana sweeper on the next turn or some other large threat if you'd rather do that. And if you're worried about skipping your turn 3, then you could also play like Into the Floodmaw or Burst Lightning or something like that the same turn that you play this card, so you're not just wasting your 3rd turn. So again, I think there's a lot of things about this, and if your deck is trying to go into the late game anyway, I think it just kind of puts the game away a lot of the time to draw 4 or 5 cards during your opponent's end step, especially if they're about out. But hey, if you like artifacts and you want to draw cards, then I guess obviously this card's good. But so is Cerebral Download. I still haven't really gotten used to seeing the word download on a Magic card. It's very weird to me, but the card itself is pretty good, and I haven't really seen anybody talking about this one, man. 5 mana seems like an awful lot, don't get me wrong, but for 5 mana, you get a lot. You surveil X, X being equal to the number of artifacts that you control, and then you draw 3 cards, and you do all this at instant speed. Now, I admit that it's been a while since a control deck wanted a 5 mana card draw piece. Usually we want to keep those at 4 mana and under, and there's some even better card draw pieces in this very set that we'll talk about when we get to the main list. But for now, I do think this could have some lifting to do in Standard, man, especially alongside stuff that you might not necessarily think of right off the bat. Like, again, we're looking at control here, so why don't we play Deduce, which makes a clue token, which makes us surveil more for this. We could also play it in our All Fate Scroll control deck, you know what I mean? Scroll control, can we call it that? Because Scroll Alt Delete, I don't know. Either way, trying to find a funny name for it, but one way or the other, yeah, you play All Fate Scroll on 3, and that kind of ramps you into this on the next turn if you got nothing better to do with your mana, and the fact that Scroll is out will give you a Surveil. So I don't think it's too hard to get Surveil 3 on this. And I think the moment you get Surveil 3, the card is nuts. You know, not only can you fix your draws, but you can also feed your graveyard. And it's especially noteworthy that if you have enough artifacts out and you end up surveilling 7, that seems extremely strong too. And it's probably not actually that hard to get to a relatively high number on the Surveil. I could even see this being a 1 or 2 of in like a Simulacrum Synthesizer deck to help close the door, or just, you know, get back in the game because you've got a couple of artifacts out, like a Synthesizer, Repurposing Bay, whatever, but you need to draw artifacts, which seems like a case against this card, but still, it will definitely help you draw into a bunch more so you get more Synthesizer triggers. So that's just a couple of decks this could end up in, and I didn't even cover all the bases in a control deck. There are plenty of other cards that either incidentally make artifacts or artifacts that you just don't mind playing in your control deck, like Maze Mind Tome is another good example. You know, you turn 2 Maze Mind Tome, or turn 3 Deduce, or whatever you end up doing, and suddenly you've got a couple of artifacts out. That makes this a pretty exciting looking card. So I like too much about this. Probably 5 mana might just mean that it's completely out of playability, but I still think it has something to it. But let's go ahead and push it on to number 6. This is Dual Sun Technique, which has pretty appropriate initials, right? Because it'll just dust any opponent it comes up against out of nowhere, dude. Double strike at instant speed is always pretty playable for the right mana cost, and 2 mana is the right mana cost, but this has a little bit of extra text on it here, because if the creature that you've targeted with this has a +1/+1 counter on it, you draw a freaking card. Now, first of all, how incredible would this have been with Heartfire Hero in the format? He got banned, and suddenly this card gets a little bit worse, but it still makes this list because there's plenty of other things you can target with it. First of all, any Bristly Bill or Mossborn Hydra, especially shenanigans, are pretty interesting with this card. You know, you'll probably just kill them outright if it targets a Mossborn Hydra, but just in case you don't, you end up drawing that card, which is nice. And there's a bunch more weird examples like Marauding Mako. Inti can pass around counters, that's kind of fun. Map tokens can give counters, and there's plenty of ways to give those to yourself. So there's just a lot of ways to get counters on just about every creature you can imagine. Agatha's Soul Cauldron puts counters on stuff. I don't think you're going to be doing that, but still, my point is, any creature just about can get a +1/+1 counter in many non-embarrassing ways that don't involve putting bad cards in your deck. So suddenly, in case Dual Sun Technique doesn't just outright win you the game, the extra card is really, really nice. I also want to point out before we move on how well this works with another card from Edge of Eternities called Honor, which is just a 1 white mana sorcery, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature and draw a card. That would have also been insane with Heartfire Hero, but again, even in that card's absence, both of these cards are great, and they work especially well together, I want to point out, especially if you're going to head to your pre-release in a couple of hours. That could be important information to know that these two cards are in the same format, but either way, even without Honor, I think Dual Sun Technique is just Teamer Battle Rage in a different color, which can get really, really good really, really fast, depending on how fast you're trying to go in your Magic deck. Just really, really like this card a lot. But we have made it halfway down the list, and we're about to talk about a sweeper in a set full of amazing sweepers that have received a lot of press, but there's at least one that I haven't heard basically anyone talk about for Standard, and it's Singularity Rupture. Sure looks good in Commander, I'll give you that much, but again, I think most people just think a 6 mana sweeper's too much in Standard. I know I've had plenty of people tell me that 5 mana sweepers cost too much for standard. And I guess maybe those people just never play Arena or something. I have to assume. I'm having a little bit of fun here. I'm ribbing my friends slightly, but when I choose to boot up Arena, every day that I do that, I play against Sunfall and Devious Cover-Up. So hasn't really been a problem for my opponents. I see those cards all the time. Now, again, 6 mana is a whole mana more, but I think the Dimir decks that want to run something like this will probably be able to do it and get to turn whatever without dying. I think it's much more likely the decks with lots of removal and even some life gain are going to be able to actually get to this. And if they do, they found an incredible replacement for Jace the Perfected Mind in any mill deck. And once you remember that River Churn Monument is also in this format, this card starts to look really good. You mill half their library with this, and then the next turn, River Churn Monument just kills them. I guess you don't have to worry too much about saying go and your opponent untapping because, you just destroyed all their creatures. So, card seems more than all right to me. I don't know if we'll see more than a 2 of in the Dimir Mill decks, and I'm not even sure the Dimir Mill decks will be a thing. But again, this plus Monument, plus Jador, by the way, from Final Fantasy, all seem like amazing options to have to make Mill decks real in Standard. But moving from one removal spell to another, number 4 is one where we're going to kind of zoom in a little bit and focus on a point-and-click removal spell that I haven't seen anyone point or click at yet this season. It's Plasma Bolt. Now, Plasma Bolt looks really awesome. It's just a single red mana for a sorcery that deals 2 damage to any target. But if you've hit Void that turn, it just becomes Lightning Bolt. Now, sure, it's still sorcery speed, but 3 damage to any target is way better. And this spell doesn't necessarily look cracked, but it looks good enough for people to really be talking about, and no one is at all. This was part of the common dump on the last day, so it wouldn't surprise me if not as many people had seen this one or, just skimmed over it if they did look at the common dump, but that would be a mistake. I think Plasma Bolt is in a really good position right now. I think Mono Red Burn is in a decent position right now. It's got Shock and Bolt Wave, and this could just be another copy of Bolt Wave. It's got Lightning Strike, and it's got a bunch of other burn spells. Boros Charm, Lightning Helix, right? There's an awful lot in this format, even past rotation, that could be fantastic in a burn deck. And I think that Plasma Bolt kind of gives us a critical mass of burn spells that go face that we can actually play in Standard, right? We've got a few that we're just not playing, like Channel Dragonfire, but that's probably because the card's just not that good enough, bless its heart. But, alongside stuff like Bolt Wave and Shock and whatnot, again, I think we've got a pretty good core of burn spells that could actually form a real burn deck in Standard right now, which is something we really haven't seen in a long time. But we are in the top 3, and we have got some funky picks for the top 3 sleepers this time around, starting with Scrounge for Eternity. I have brought this card up to a few people in the preseason, and they never know what I'm talking about. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a sorcery, and as an additional cost to cast it, you're either going to sacrifice an artifact or a creature. But when you do that, you get to look into your graveyard and pick out a creature or spacecraft with mana value 5 or less, throw it into play, and just gives you a lander token. Nice, thanks. This doesn't seem like too much at first glance, but there's actually a lot of really cool plays with it. There's 3 different overlords you can get back with this, and they just are creatures immediately, and they all have really good ETB triggers and great power toughness. So overlords is probably one of the better things that you can actually do with this card, but there's plenty more just in the same color it is. You also have Harvester of Misery, which you could, on turn 2, for instance, go ahead and cycle for, a removal spell, and then as early as turn 3, just sacrifice your Infestation Sage or your 1 mana artifact or whatever it is. Just bring back Harvester, and now you got a big flyer, and if they happen to play more creatures in the interim, then I guess you get to blow those away too. So that's a fun one. You could have also cycled your Agonosaur Rex earlier in the game and then just get your Agonosaur Rex back with the card. I guess that seems fine too. There's a number of really funky plays like that. For instance, Kefka. You could do and basically ignore the color requirements on Kefka, get him for only 3 mana, and get a really sick enter the battlefield trigger. That ETB trigger is better than people give it credit for. But you could also use it to set up Bloodthirsty Conqueror lines, which is probably what I'm most excited about for. But it just does kind of a lot of stuff. 5 mana seems like it cuts you off from reanimating the best creatures in Standard, but Although that actually may be technically true. You can't get Valgaboth or anything off of this. You can get some surprisingly efficient ETB triggers, and huge guys for that matter, on turn 3 off of this. And I think it might be worth exploring. Number 2 is a weird one, but I guess that's the whole point of the list. They're all weird ones. Extinguish Your Battleship is a card that I think definitely deserves a spotlight. Now, it may cost 8 mana for a spacecraft. That's an awful lot of mana, but we'll discuss that in just a second. When this enters, it deals 4 damage to each creature, and you blow up a non-creature permanent. But that's not all. Once you have it at 5+ station, it's a 10/10 flample, which is pretty good. Now, it might be kind of tough to station because it's going to blow up a lot of creatures when it comes into play, sure, but if you've got a relatively big dude laying around, you could easily station this like the turn it comes down if you wanted to. Decent reanimation target if you're trying to do that with artifacts, and we have effects that do that in standard right now for 4 mana. We have like a Zombify for artifacts, so that seems like it might be pretty decent. But apart from that, this could just go in like an almost all colorless Ugin deck, Like if Ugin goes and searches this up with the ultimate, it seems like a pretty powerful thing to go and grab. Card is also stank nasty with Tanic. There's a lot of cards that are stank nasty with Tanic, and a lot of content creators are going to tell you about all the cards that are really good with it, but I think Battleship is especially good with Tanic. And note that it doesn't kill the Tanic. I think it's meant that way. It's designed that way on purpose, if you ask me. Tanic's going to be crazy with a lot of stuff. He's on the main list. Don't worry, we'll get there in a couple of days, but yeah, Battleship looks pretty crazy with that dude in particular. But my number 1 is a card that I think could be involved not only in like standard combo decks or just straight up standard artifact decks that are, again, more on the control-y side, but I think this one could have quite the commander future ahead of it, and I am surprised that I have seen not one single person this preseason mention Scour for Scrap. 4 mana, it's 3 and a blue for an instant. Choose one or both. You can do both of these things if you'd like. Either tutor your library for an artifact, throw that thing into your hand, or you can take a look in your graveyard and get an artifact back from there. Put that thing in your hand. So a potential 4 mana instant speed draw 2 is pretty good just in and of itself, right? But the fact that this goes and gets the synthesizer, goes and gets any artifact that you might be looking for at any given time, again at instant speed, is just kind of wild to me for any decks that want to play key artifacts in this format right now. This even allows us to do a kind of toolboxy thing where we can play like one of very specific artifacts in our main deck, and this can always go get whatever we need at any given time. And if we happen to lose a critical artifact, this can always get it back too. We can do both. Again, it's crazy to me. Go tutor up an artifact and get the synthesizer back, get the repurposing bay back, get the Extinguisher Battleship back, get the 1,000-Year Smithy back, whatever it is that you lost that is just integral to your deck's, engine, then you can just grab it back. Doesn't matter if they've been able to disenchant it, you get another shot at it. We've already seen some 4 mana tutors that haven't really made the cut in standard, like Mystical, Teachings, which was one of the best Magic cards of all time, but just didn't have the Dimir control deck this last season. Mystical Teaching still has 4.5 years. It'll be fine, but again, we haven't seen a great example set by other 4-mana tutors lately, but this one goes and gets game-winning cards right then and there, and also keeps you from losing because you lost your game-winning card that you built your whole deck around. So, too much about this I like. And again, potential Commander All-Star, because I heard they like tutors, especially at instant speed. But that is Itsky Lewitsky. You just tell me what your sleepers for the set are, or more likely, probably why mine are terrible and we'll never see play. I enjoy both kinds of comments. Now, do remember we've got the main list for Standard coming up. It might be top 20, something like that. Also got the top 10 Commander cards coming up. So, there are going to be cards that didn't make this list that end up making the big boy lists, I guess. But either way, just let me know kind of what cards you feel like aren't getting enough love in Edge of Eternity's previous season, because I think this set is a little bit more powerful than I've seen other people out there in YouTube land giving it credit for. I keep seeing the line that this set just doesn't look that great, but I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a lot of incredible cards, even for Standard, in this set, especially with rotation looming. So just let me know kind of what your thoughts are on the thing down there, and any cards that you can't wait to play because you think they're better than people think they are. But anyway, guys, just do all the YouTube stuff on your way out. Hit the like button. It's the one shaped like a thumb. Subscribe to the sandwich. Trying to get to 150K. You guys are moving that needle pretty fast. I appreciate you. We'll get there before you know it. That's because of viewers like you. But if you really want to help out around here, we have a Patreon. Speaking of supported by viewers like you, that's the It's the whole thing with the Patreon. If that made your ear tingle, then the Patreon's for you. $1 a month is all it takes, and you'll be able to vote on what content we do around here for Edge of Eternity standard decks and stuff like that. So that sounds like you'd want to do that. It's just $1. It's just $1. It's $1 every single month. Just click the link, or more likely, it's not a link. You'll actually have to paste the address from the description into your address bar, which I know no one wants to do, but maybe just this one time. You know what I mean? Just one time. Either way, that's all I've got for this one, guys. That is, of course, Allski Kowalski. So I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.